The room still smelled of funeral incense when Ethan leaned back, his lips curling into a smug smile. He swirled the champagne in his glass, savoring the moment, then let it crash onto the mahogany table with deliberate force. $210 million, he boasted, raising his voice just enough. That's what I have now. You're nothing but a shadow. Rachel froze, her heart pounding in disbelief. Less than 2 days after burying his father, her husband wasn't mourning. He was celebrating her humiliation. Before we dive deeper into today's heartbreaking story, make sure you subscribe to her betrayal stories and ring the notification bell. Here, you'll always find stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and the shocking twists of fate that remind us justice has many faces. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below, because the next story might just echo your own experiences. Rachel was 39, freshly divorced, her life scattered between unpaid bills and broken dreams, when Ethan appeared. He dazzled her with charm and big ideas, and she clung to the hope of second chances. But Henry, Ethan's father, saw deeper. He admired Rachel's discipline, her quiet resilience, the way she carried burdens without complaint. In her, Henry recognized the strength his son lacked. Ethan was reckless. One failed food truck, one doomed app, and debts Rachel quietly patched with double shifts. She told herself loyalty would one day be rewarded. Then Henry's health collapsed. Rachel cared for him with soup, laundry, and steady presence. Ethan, meanwhile, turned illness into performance, staged photos of himself feeding his father, while a private nurse did the work. One evening, Henry pressed Rachel's hand with fragile strength. "Don't let him break you. Remember, justice arrives in unexpected packages." His words stayed with her. At the funeral, rain still clung to the earth when Rachel caught Ethan shielding his phone under an umbrella, scrolling messages about his inheritance. Shame burned in her chest. Not for herself, but for the man beside her. As soon as the casket was sealed, Ethan muttered, "Come on. We've got bigger things to do." 2 nights later, his mask dropped completely. Ethan spread bank statements across the dining table, glass in hand, laughing as he browsed penthouses in Miami and a pearl-white Lamborghini. Then he turned to her, eyes cold. "You've been a parasite, Rachel. 4 years wasted. I don't need you anymore. I'm filing for divorce." The words hit harder than any slap. Silence pressed against her ribs. She realized then she was never his partner. She was only a shadow. But Henry had left more than money. That morning, among his belongings, Rachel had found a sealed envelope tucked inside his old book of sermons. In shaky handwriting, it read, "To Rachel, for when the truth comes." As Ethan raised his glass in mock victory, Rachel's eyes flicked toward her purse. The envelope seemed to hum in the dim light. For the first time that night, her lips curved. Not in surrender, but in quiet defiance. Ethan noticed nothing. He was too busy celebrating. If only he knew his father's final lesson had just begun. The champagne glass struck the mahogany table with a sharp crack, echoing like a gavel in a courtroom. Ethan leaned back, a cruel smile tugging at his lips. The scent of funeral incense still clung to his black suit, but grief had no place in his eyes. He raised the glass toward Rachel, his voice dripping poison. "You think I need you? Rachel, you've been nothing but a shadow. I have $210 million now. You're worthless." The words cut deeper than any blade. Rachel's hands, once cherished by him, now trembled in her lap, hidden beneath the tablecloth. Her throat burned, but no sound escaped. Around her, Henry's family portrait stared from velvet-draped walls, silent witnesses to her humiliation. Ethan laughed, low and mocking, swirling the champagne like a king savoring conquest. Rachel's heart pounded. Just 48 hours ago, Henry's coffin had been lowered into the earth. Yet here was his son, already celebrating freedom. And this was only the beginning. Before we go deeper into this heartbreaking story, make sure you subscribe to Her Betrayal Stories and ring the bell. Here, you'll always find true tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and the shocking twists of fate that remind us justice wears many faces. Tell me, where are you watching from? Share in the comments below, because the next story might just echo your own life. Rachel had met Ethan when hope was nearly gone. 39, divorced, her first marriage crushed under debts and broken promises. She was piecing life together when Ethan appeared, smiling, brimming with charm, selling dreams too big for his empty hands. Henry, Ethan's father, saw what his son could not. He noticed the way Rachel stretched every dollar, the way she endured without complaint, how she smiled even when nights grew cold. He admired her quiet strength, the very strength Ethan lacked. But Ethan was reckless. One failed food truck, one flashy app that fizzled. Each venture left their bank account emptier, while Rachel worked double shifts to cover the holes. She told herself loyalty meant endurance, that someday love would reward her. Then Henry's health began to fail. Rachel was there, soup steaming in her hands, laundry folded with care, reading the newspaper when his eyes blurred. Ethan? He turned illness into theater. Photos of himself spoon-feeding his father lit up social media, hundreds of likes pouring in, while the real work was left to a hired nurse. One evening, as Ethan bragged about his next million-dollar idea, Henry's frail hand reached for Rachel's. His grip was weak, but his words held iron. Don't let him break you. And Rachel, remember, justice has a way of arriving in unexpected packages. The words lodged deep in her chest. She didn't understand then, but she would. The day Henry was laid to rest, rain drummed against umbrellas. Rachel stood at the grave, fingers tight around a handkerchief. Ethan, beside her, wasn't listening to the rabbi's prayer. His face glowed blue with the light of his phone. Rachel caught him shielding the screen, scrolling messages about the inheritance. Her stomach twisted. Shame, not for herself, but for the man standing beside her. When the final shovel of soil fell, Ethan didn't linger. He tugged her arm, muttering, "Come on, we've got bigger things to do." 2 nights later, the mask came off. Rachel sat across from him at the dining table, knuckles white against the chair. Papers littered the wood, bank statements, account transfers, glossy brochures. Ethan poured another glass, chuckling as he searched online for Miami penthouses, for a pearl-white Lamborghini. Henry had barely been gone, yet Ethan was already carving a life without her. "You've been a parasite, Rachel," he sneered. 4 years wasted. I don't need you anymore. I'm filing for divorce." The word hit like a thunderclap. Divorce. Not shouted in anger, not spat in drunken rage. Cold, calculated, deliberate. Rachel wanted to scream, to claw back the years she had poured into saving him from himself, but silence crushed her chest. She saw it now. Ethan had never seen her as a partner. She was a stepping stone, a wallet, a shadow, and shadows could be erased. But Henry had left more than memories. That morning, Rachel had discovered a sealed envelope tucked inside his old book of sermons. The handwriting, shaky but firm, read, "To Rachel." For when the truth comes, she hadn't opened it yet. Fear and hope tangled in her chest. Now, as Ethan raised his glass high, reveling in imaginary freedom, Rachel's gaze flicked to her purse on the sideboard. The envelope seemed to glow in the dim light, humming with secrets. For the first time that night, Rachel's lips curved, not in surrender, but in quiet defiance. Ethan noticed nothing. He was too busy toasting his own victory. If only he knew. His father's final lesson had just begun. The morning sun bled weakly through the drapes, striping the dining table in pale gold. On it still lay the divorce papers Ethan had shoved at her days ago. Rachel hadn't signed them. She refused to hand him that victory. Each morning, Ethan grew more restless. Cabinets slammed, drawers banged. He cursed under his breath whenever her eyes lingered too long on the envelope hidden deep in her purse. But Rachel wasn't staring at it in fear anymore. She was waiting for the moment Henry had promised. It came sooner than expected. That afternoon, the house was quiet, empty of Ethan's thunderous voice. He had stormed out boasting about a deal on a luxury car. Rachel sat alone, hands trembling as she drew the envelope into the light. Slowly, she tore the brittle seal. Henry's handwriting leaned across the page, shaky but still commanding. Rachel, if you're reading this, then I am gone. I trusted you more than my own son. I know these days will not be easy, but I also know you are stronger than you believe. Ethan was never ready to inherit my life's work. I feared what greed would make of him. That is why I left conditions in my will. Conditions only you will understand. Trust Thomas Whitman. Show up no matter what Ethan says or does. Justice has a way of arriving in unexpected packages. Stand tall. The truth will protect you. Henry. The words blurred as tears stung her eyes. Henry had known. He had seen Ethan's hunger, his arrogance, his weakness, but he had also seen her loyalty. Rachel folded the letter back with reverence, pressing it to her chest. For the first time since Ethan's cruelty began, despair loosened its grip. Resolve replaced it, solid as stone. The next evening, Ethan slid the papers toward her again, pen tapping the wood like a ticking clock. Sign them, he ordered. I've already booked my flight to Miami. Once these are filed, I'll be free. You can crawl back to whatever pathetic life you had before me. Rachel set the pen aside, calm, almost serene. Her gaze lifted and locked on his. I'll speak to my lawyer. Ethan scoffed, leaning back with a laugh sharp as glass. Lawyer? You don't even have money for one. Her lips curved, faint but firm. I don't need money for this. I already have someone who believes in me. For the first time, Ethan's confidence cracked. He expected tears, pleading, never quiet steel. That night, Rachel dialed the number from the voicemail Henry's lawyer had left. Her breath shook as she whispered into the receiver. Mr. Whitman? The voice on the other end was steady, anchoring her. Mrs. Evans. I've been waiting for your call. I don't know if I can do this, she confessed, voice breaking. Ethan says he'll ruin me. You don't need to fear him, Thomas replied firmly. Henry planned everything. Your presence at the will reading is essential. Without you, the truth will never see daylight. Rachel closed her eyes, inhaling deeply as though drawing courage straight from Henry's memory. Then I'll be there. The days before the reading crawled by like heavy rain dripping through a cracked roof. Ethan strutted around the house, drunk on fantasies. Glossy catalogs for yachts sprawled across counters. He bragged about owning private islands, holding his phone like a crown. Imagine, Rachel, he sneered one evening, waving a brochure at her face. Paradise without you dragging me down. Rachel tucked Henry's letter into her coat pocket, letting its weight anchor her. Each insult now felt strangely hollow, dulled by the secret burning quietly in her hands. Ethan was blind to the storm gathering over his head. The day of reckoning arrived. Thomas Whitman's office smelled faintly of leather and paper, shelves lined with law books standing like sentinels. Ethan swaggered in first, wearing a cheap, flashy suit. On his wrist ticked a counterfeit Rolex, its second hand jerking unevenly. He dropped into the leather chair with exaggerated confidence, crossing his legs and leaning close to whisper at Rachel. "You really think you belong here?" His voice dripped venom. "This is my inheritance, not yours." Rachel didn't flinch. She smoothed her simple blazer, the one Henry had once admired for its professional dignity. On her wrist gleamed the old, scratched watch Henry had given her years before. To her, it wasn't just metal. It was a shield. Thomas entered, calm but resolute, carrying a thick folder. He placed it on the desk, his gaze moving from Ethan to Rachel. "Thank you both for coming." Henry left very specific instructions. Ethan leaned forward, a grin spreading. "Let's skip the speeches. Just tell me how much." Thomas's lips curved faintly, almost pitying. "Patience, Ethan. This is about more than numbers. This is about responsibility, discipline, and above all, justice." Rachel's heart steadied. She heard Henry's voice again. "Justice has a way of arriving in unexpected packages." Ethan rolled his eyes, waving a dismissive hand. "Spare me the lectures. Just read it." Thomas opened the folder. His voice filled the room, slow and deliberate, each word like a nail hammered into wood. "To my son, Ethan Evans, you are the heir to my estate, but only under one condition. You must remain married to your wife, Rachel, for 1 full year after my passing. If you fail, or if Rachel chooses to leave you, the inheritance will be redirected to a charitable trust under Rachel's stewardship." The words sliced through the air. Rachel's breath caught. Ethan's jaw dropped. The smug grin drained from his face like blood from a wound. "What?" he exploded, slamming his fist onto the table. "That's insane. He would never—" Thomas raised a hand, calm as stone. "It is all here, Ethan. Your father was precise. If Rachel walks away, so does your fortune." Rachel's fingers brushed the scratched face of Henry's watch. She felt his presence again, calm, steady, whispering from beyond. "Stand tall. The truth will protect you." For the first time in weeks, Ethan was cornered. And Rachel. Rachel was no longer the shadow in the room. She was the key. The game had changed. If this turning point gave you chills, leave a comment below. Have you ever witnessed greed twist someone you once trusted? Share your story. It may help another woman feel less alone. And don't forget, subscribe to her betrayal stories and ring the bell. Here, we uncover true tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and the shocking ways justice always finds its voice. Ethan's face flamed red as Thomas's words thundered across the office. For a man who had strutted in like royalty, his collapse was almost cinematic. Arrogance crumbling into raw desperation. "1 year?" he spat, voice sharp, ragged. "He's punishing me from the grave. This is outrageous." Thomas didn't blink. His calm was like stone. "Your father wanted to test whether you valued marriage, loyalty, and integrity more than money. He believed Rachel was the anchor you never honored. This condition is binding. Irrevocable." Rachel sat quietly, her hands folded, her breath steady. For once, she didn't need to defend herself. Henry's voice was already speaking through the walls of this room. Ethan turned to her, eyes wild, spit catching at the corner of his mouth. You planned this with him, didn't you? You poisoned him against me." Rachel met his rage with stillness. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "No, Ethan. You did that all by yourself." The silence that followed pressed heavy, like a storm gathering over open sea. Ethan's chest heaved, his knuckles white against the chair. He swung back to Thomas. I'll fight this in court. I'll prove Rachel's a fraud. Thomas slid a small USB drive across the polished wood, his tone cut like a scalpel. Henry anticipated this. He left more than paper. The screen flickered to life. And there he was. Henry. Frail. Pale. Yet his eyes still blazing with clarity. The weight of his voice filled the room, silencing even Ethan's fury. Ethan, if you're watching this, I am gone. You may feel wronged, but wealth without responsibility is destruction. You squandered chances. You treated love as disposable. I will not let my life's work become fuel for your ruin. Rachel's throat tightened. Even through a screen, Henry's gaze seemed to pierce her husband, stripping away his armor. That is why, Henry continued, I chose Rachel as guardian of this choice. She gave loyalty where you gave arrogance. She carried burdens you refused to touch. If you can honor her for 1 year, prove yourself faithful, then perhaps you are worthy. If not, justice will arrive another way. The screen went black. Silence thundered. Ethan's composure shattered. He slammed his fist so hard the folder jumped. This is a trick, he barked. He can't do this to me. I'm his blood. Rachel's voice was soft, yet unshakable. Respect isn't given by blood, Ethan. It's earned. Her words landed like a slap across his face, his lips twisted, eyes blazing. You think this makes you powerful? You're nothing without me. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes glinting with cold fire. You're wrong. I was nothing with you. For the first time, Ethan faltered. His jaw opened, then clamped shut. He looked from Thomas to Rachel, a man cornered, stripped bare. Fine, he muttered, voice cracking. I'll play along. 1 year, that's all. Then I'll be free. But even he heard the hollowness in his words. The room knew it. Weeks bled into months. Ethan's empire of illusions crumbled. Creditors clawed at him with relentless calls. The Rolex on his wrist, once flashed like a crown jewel, was revealed as a fake, the second hand stuttering, betraying the lie. Former friends ghosted his messages, whispers trailing in his wake. Fraud, fool, failure. The king had no court left. Rachel, meanwhile, rediscovered her strength in silence. At a modest community center, she poured her energy into helping others. She carried casseroles to grieving widows, taught budgeting tricks to women clutching paychecks too thin. And for the first time in years, when she walked into a room, she was not Ethan's shadow. She was simply Rachel, and people looked at her with respect. She would return home with eyes alight, her smile gentle but real. And Ethan noticed. Rage simmered inside him each time. No matter how loudly he cursed, he could not crush that light. 3 months later, the last mask fell. At Thomas's office again, Ethan staggered in, tie crooked, eyes bloodshot, desperation clinging to him like sweat. He slammed down a wrinkled set of papers. Sign it, his voice cracked. Take the payout. Leave. Stop pretending you matter. Rachel picked up the papers slowly, scanning the scribbled lines. Then she pushed them back across the desk with deliberate calm. No, Ethan. I won't take scraps. I'll honor Henry's will, exactly as he wrote it. Her voice rose, firmer now, her gaze cutting through him. This villa? It's mine. And you're trespassing. The words rolled like thunder, shaking the room. Ethan froze, eyes wide, as if the ground beneath him had given way. Thomas nodded gravely. Rachel has chosen. Ethan, without her consent, and without fulfilling the condition, the inheritance is no longer yours. Effective immediately, the estate transfers to the charitable trust, under Rachel's stewardship. Ethan's world imploded in that moment. His fists trembled. His lips curled into a snarl, but the fight had drained from his body. You ruined me, he rasped. Rachel rose, gathering her coat with quiet dignity. She paused, meeting his eyes one final time. No, Ethan. You ruined yourself. Outside, the city roared, traffic honking, footsteps rushing, neon flashing, but Ethan heard only the echo of his own defeat. He stumbled into the street, shoulders hunched, curses swallowed by the noise. Rachel walked the opposite way. Her steps were steady, her purse pressed close against her side, Henry's letter still folded within. Above her, the sky broke open with light after a storm. For the first time in years, she wasn't a shadow. She was sunlight piercing the clouds. If Rachel's strength in the face of betrayal touched you, let us know in the comments. Have you ever seen greed tear apart a family, or watched someone value money over love? Your story matters here. And don't forget, subscribe to her betrayal stories and turn on the bell so you never miss the next tale of sacrifice, betrayal, and justice arriving in unexpected ways. The winter snow had begun to melt when Rachel finally closed the door of the old villa behind her. The echo of the latch was not one of loss, but of release. The house no longer felt like Ethan's cage, but neither was it the sanctuary she needed for her rebirth. She left it to the charitable trust Henry had written into his will, a place that would soon transform into headquarters for community programs, financial literacy workshops, and shelters Henry had long dreamed of funding. Rachel chose something smaller, a modest apartment overlooking a quiet park, where the morning light spilled across wide windows and the air smelled faintly of pine and fresh earth. When she opened the window that first morning, the breeze carried not silence, but possibility. For the first time in years, her surroundings reflected peace instead of performance, truth instead of pretense. She unpacked slowly, carefully, every folded shirt and stacked book feeling like a ritual of renewal. In the center of her new living room, she placed a single framed photo of Henry, not the stern patriarch in a suit, but the man caught mid-laughter at a summer barbecue, sauce staining his shirt, eyes crinkling with warmth. That was the Henry who had believed in her. That was the Henry whose trust she would carry forward. Meanwhile, Ethan's fall was swift and merciless. His Miami penthouse never materialized. Creditors chased him across the city, letters piling like storm clouds. Cars he had barely driven were hauled away under the cold glare of neighbors. The counterfeit Rolex he had once brandished with pride came off his wrist in shame, stuffed into a drawer no one would ever open again. The friends who once raised champagne flutes at his table began whispering behind his back. Invitations dried up. Calls went unanswered. At last, in desperation, he took a job at a call center. His once booming voice, so quick to sneer, now strained as he read insurance scripts to strangers who didn't care who he had once pretended to be. The man who had lounged like a king was reduced to begging for overtime hours, counting coins instead of millions. Bitterness creased his face, each line aging him faster than years ever could. Rachel heard about it only in passing, through a neighbor's hushed comment, through the occasional headline she never lingered on. She didn't gloat at his downfall, but she didn't pity him either. Justice, she knew, had already done its work. At the community center, Rachel found herself surrounded by women who reminded her of who she had once been, women who had poured everything into others only to be left with empty hands. They sat on folding chairs, notebooks clutched to their chests, eyes weary but hungry for hope. Rachel stood at the front of the room, wearing a simple cardigan, Henry's old watch still circling her wrist. Its scratched face glinted under the fluorescent lights like a badge of survival. "Money can disappear," she told them gently, her voice steady but full of warmth. "But your worth never does. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Respect isn't given because of blood or marriage or status. It's earned through kindness, honesty, and love." Some nodded, Others wiped away tears with the back of their hands. A few even clapped softly, breaking the silence with fragile but growing courage. Rachel felt her throat tighten, not from pain this time, but from pride. She was no longer the woman crushed under insults at a mahogany table. She was someone others looked toward for strength. One evening, after a long day of teaching, Rachel walked home through the park. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of gold, lavender, and the faintest trace of rose. She paused at a bench, watching children chase each other through the grass, their laughter bright and ringing like wind chimes. For a moment, she closed her eyes. The wind brushed her face, cool and tender, as though Henry himself had leaned close. She whispered softly into the twilight, "Thank you." I kept the promise. I stood tall. The weight she had carried for so long lifted then, scattering like leaves caught in an autumn gust. The community flourished under the trust Henry had designed. Scholarships for single mothers, small business grants, financial literacy classes, all blossomed in Rachel's care. The building that once belonged to Ethan's arrogance now buzzed with the energy of second chances. People began to recognize her not as Ethan's discarded wife, but as Rachel Evans, the woman who had turned betrayal into strength, injustice into justice. Yet she never lost her humility. When women approached with stories of abandonment, of humiliation, of starting over from ashes, Rachel listened with the same patience she once gave Henry. "Have you ever faced a moment when someone told you that you were worthless?" she would ask gently. "If so, you're not alone. And you're not powerless." Each conversation was another spark. Each story shared was another stitch in the fabric of healing. As months turned into a year, Rachel received one final envelope from Thomas Whitman. Inside lay Henry's last message, written to be delivered only after every condition had been fulfilled. She unfolded the paper with reverence, her hands trembling, as though opening a blessing. "Rachel, I knew Ethan would stumble, but I also knew you would rise. I entrusted my legacy not to money, but to the one person who understood its true value. You are my pride, my justice, my family. Carry it forward, not as a burden, but as a torch. Others will find their way by your light." Rachel pressed the letter to her heart, tears sliding down her cheeks, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. She had feared being forgotten. Instead, she had become the keeper of light. And so it was that one evening, standing once more at the shore of Lake Michigan, the waves rippling in the evening breeze, Rachel whispered into the wind, "Respect isn't given by blood. It's earned through love and kindness." And in that moment she understood. Her story was not one of betrayal, but of rebirth. If you were Rachel, standing in that lawyer's office with your husband's betrayal burning in your ears, what would you have done? Would you have walked away? Fought back? Or, like Rachel, found the courage to stand tall and let justice unfold? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced betrayal inside your own family? Have you seen greed tear loved ones apart? This is a space where no one suffers alone, where every story reminds us that justice, though delayed, always arrives. If Rachel's journey touched you, leave a message for yourself in the comments. Something you want to remember the next time you feel unseen or unworthy. And don't forget to subscribe to her Betrayal Stories for more cinematic tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and the twists of fate that remind us all. Healing and justice walk hand in hand.